Hello Cave Dwellers, how are you all doing? It's Thursday, which means it's RMC release day. Early access release for the patrons for a week and public release. And those patrons will now, some of you will now have seen the video concerning these IBM NetVistas. And you might get a sense for the scale of the task that I've been up against, the absolute mountain I had to climb to get these cleaned. We're now at the final stage where this morning I finished imaging them all. There will be a short video on that, but it will be a very short follow-up video. And I'm now photographing them all to get all of the eBay listings ready. If you're a patron, I will open some of them up early for you just to give you an extra perk. And some of the machines I couldn't fix, so there are a couple of empty cases. So if any of you are looking for a project box, I know that Pillock over on Discord may have earmarked one. So I may have another one going if you're just looking for an empty case to put a pie or something in. I might put a Mister in one. Might be a nice case to put one in with a CRT on top. Anyway, you'll get to see more of that next week. Some fun things have happened today. We've got some videos to watch together today, but before we do, the first thing I wanted to say was I've been playing with this Voodoo Banshee, which I think I showed you last week. I've been playing with it in a Pentium 3 machine, and unfortunately, after about 10 minutes, it starts to overheat, so you get lots of artifacting on the screen. It's no surprise the heatsink is at a really weird angle, as if it's been reapplied at some point or something like that. So I'm going to take that off, put some new thermal adhesive on there, and the heatsink should be fine. It's just a chunk of metal. Heatsinks don't break. So we'll reapply that, and hopefully that will get the temperature down. If it doesn't, we can screw a fan on top. There is a couple of header pins which are missing, but you can see a thing on the PCB here marked fan. So we could put some pins in there. And maybe stick a fan on top. A nice, tiny, fast RPM fan that sounds like a mosquito. You know the ones. Anyway, the really cool thing about this was I had this in my hand, when a message popped up from Twitter from a chap called Steve. Hey Neil, I've got this box for a Creative Labs Voodoo Banshee. I found it in my loft. I don't know where the card is. I'm going to throw it out, but do you have any use for it? It's the exact retail box for this card. I love it when that happens. So never throw away your boxes. There's always someone out there who would want it. So until this goes in a machine, or if it doesn't, it can go back in its original retail box and look nice up on the shelf there. Really cool. And also, do you remember I showed you the 3D games? Where are they? Last week. Here we go. Games like Driller and Castle Master, the Freescape games. I mentioned I didn't have 3D construction kit. Well, now I do. It has arrived, complete with, the box is a little bit dented, but it is complete. It's the Amiga version, complete with the VHS tutorial cassette tape. It's not the gold one, which I had originally, but it is an original cassette. I think it's just a slightly later release when they no longer did the gold VHSs, but it's really cool to add that to the collection. And as I remember, it has this flap on the front, which opens up. It's missing the Velcro and shows you how to create a space shuttle, or Pierre Taylor created the space shuttle in Portsmouth, and just all the things you can do with it. It's a lovely big box that feels premium, and it's got a sticker on the back to say it came from Special Reserve for $13.99. So that must have been later in its life if it was going for $13.99. But do you remember Special Reserve? They always had an advert in magazines like Amiga Format, and you could buy your software from them. Great stuff. Anyway, we've got a tour, and we've got a huge show and tell for you today. We're going to start with the tour, which comes from Woz. So let me go on to the laptop, and we will take a look. So Woz has sent in a 2-minute video tour of his microloft. There's no audio, but he has sent a transcript, if you like, of everything that's in there. So I'm just going to read through that. And some of it will coincidentally tally up with what you're seeing on the screen. Some of it won't, but I'm just going to read it, and it's a really nicely shot video, so really do enjoy it. Here we go. Here's a quick tour of my home office, or the microloft as I've come to call it. I work remotely about the third of the week, so I've made sure there's plenty to do when I take a quick break or grab a bit of inspiration for a project. The latest addition is the ZX Spectrum Next. I've set up on the coffee table for the time being with a 48K plus output in via a VGA joy for some head-to-head comparisons. Next to the sofa, I've got a selection of retro tomes and reference books, and on the shelf to the side I've displayed a number of my vintage Specky mags. The cover tapes were a massive drawback in the day. Without them, I doubt I would have read the mags. all got into tech and gaming as much as I have. Career-wise, they obviously had a massive influence. And if you don't know, Woz works for Retro Gamer magazine as well as a few other magazines under the same publishing umbrella. The main bulk of the mag and game collection is contained on one giant shelving unit. I've also got a decent selection of my original 80s toys on display. The He-Man figures are currently taking centre stage, but there's a cheeky Centurion and a vintage Lego Intergalactic command base there too. I've got a decent amount of software for the Spectrum, my first home computer displayed, including Original Crash, Sinclair User and Your Sinclair cover tapes, as well as a range of budget releases from Codemasters, Mastertronic and Ocean's Hit Squad label. There's yet more Imagine and Ocean games and a selection of sealed Mastertronic games, and amazingly, you can still buy them on eBay today. I feel they need some type of hanging display, so I'm working on that next, and I have some tapes just like this, and I too need a hanging display so let me know what you find. After the Specky, I moved on to the ST. Yes, the rule of Upton upholds, it really does, and many of the ST games I had back in the day. Then on to Windows 95, 98 and the XP era of PC gaming. I had all these titles back in the 90s and early noughties. Some still have their big boxes, others without, on display above my Windows 98 PC. Below is my near complete collection of Edge magazine. I've been reading it for the best part of 25 years, and it's a real treat to be working with the team, art directing covers, meeting veteran developers such as Yu Suzuki as part of my current role. Next, it's a Raspberry Pi powered Picade cabinet, complete with custom Neo Geo MVS artwork I created. Then it's onto the main desk, my modern gaming PC and my MacBook setup. On the right is the Windows 98 PC I built from scratch last year. It's a Pentium 3 700MHz with 256 megs of RAM, dual 3DFX Diamond Voodoo 2 cards running in SLI, a huge improvement over the system I owned back in the late 90s. That really was a dream system, wasn't it? The SLI cards. Very similar system to what I've put the Banshee in. I've got a P3 800MHz with 256 RAM. But the Banshee is just the equivalent of one Voodoo 2, not two in SLI. Finally, I've got my vintage hardware set up over in the corner of the office. The two main micros I have connected are the Plus 2 and a 4MB upgraded STE. Back in the 80s and 90s, I wasn't a Sega or a Nintendo kid. My mother went the Atari route. But at the time, I loved owning a Jaguar and a Lynx 2. Both logical choices for an ST owner in 1994, right? As the 90s came to a close, I wisened up and moved on to the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. But I'll always have fondness for the Atari hardware. Thanks in part to my uncle's Atari 800 XL, my first introduction to a US micro that he brought back from the States. Take care, stay safe and play indoors. And that's from Woz. So thank you so much for that tour, Woz. You can tell that Woz works as a, in the art business, in the photography business, directing art for the magazines, because that is a beautifully shot video, a pristine room laid out amazingly. It must just be such a nice space to be in. And as he's now having to work from home an awful lot, it's the perfect office, isn't it? It's the perfect space to look around, be inspired when you're working in the same industry 30 years down the line from all of the stuff on the shelves. You're amongst the grandfathers of the subject matter that you're working on. Wonderful stuff. Now, the next video we've got is from Andy. He sent that across today. And basically, if you have any interest whatsoever in the game Elite, as many of us do, such a classic game, he is about to school us on every facet of every version of the game that you've ever wanted to see and not wanted to see. And who knows, maybe you can help him to finish off his nearly complete collection of Elite games. So Andy's going to see us out today. If you want a giggle as well, I'll put a link down below to a tweet that I put out today of an Alan Sugar rap. I'm going to say no more than that. Enjoy it. And here's Andy's video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Cave Dwellers. Here's a badly recorded video about my Elite collection. It's pretty much the only bit of software that I try and collect for my old machines. And over the years, I've tried to get as many copies of Elite as I can off various places like Amibay and eBay and whatnot. I think my fascination for the game comes from when my dad bought it in 1984 for our BBC-B, and I was 5 at the time. So it's pretty much part of my earliest memories of growing up is playing the game Elite, watching my brother and my dad play it, and trying to become Elite in the 1980s. So I think the other fascinating thing about Elite is how many versions were released over the years. There doesn't seem to be any official record of exactly how many platforms it was released on, but I think I've worked out that it was officially available in 36 different versions, either as a budget or as a full price release. For most of the 8-bit systems, a few of the 16-bit systems, there were a few non-official releases, like the Sam Coupe version, which came out I think in 1997. But I've been trying to collect as many of the official ones as I can, and I've got 30 of the 36. So there's still a few which I'm going to be spending my time looking for, but I don't think there's much chance of actually getting those because they are pretty rare. So looking at them individually then, so you can see there's a French CPC version there, the normal cassette version, and the standard 3-inch floppy version. The Spectrum 48K only came out on tape with the lens lock. There is another incredibly rare version which was released only through Boots, which came on a floppy disk, and it was called the Opus version. So if you've got a copy of that, let me know. This is a C64 American release for the 64/128K. As you can see there, it's got the Flight to Britain competition, and it's one of the few Firebird versions that's actually got some writing on the front. Strategic space trading and combat adventure with flight simulation. That's the standard C64 floppy version, and there's the tape version with the keyboard cut out. This is the version for the Einstein on disc. You can see they were pretty cheap. All they did was put a sticker over the top of another release of it. So underneath there, I think it says Spectrum 48K. This is one of the rarer ones. The MSX floppy version took a long time to get that, find that. And then the tape version as well. Again, these are just stickers over the top of them. So I think that's a C64 version, and that's stuck over an Amstrad one. IBM Firebird version. Apple II. This is another American one, because it too's got the Flight to Britain competition. This one is Arc Elite, so the conversion to the 32-bit Acorn Archimedes, and widely regarded as the best version of Elite that there is. I've got the handbook for the German CPC version, but I don't have the Schneider CPC version, so if you've got a copy of that, please let me know. Moving down then, probably my favourite, because this is our original cassette that my dad bought in 1984 for the Beeb. I like the way that the Electron version gets green font. That's the floppy disk version for the Beeb, and then also the quite rarer 6502 and Master version. Now there's actually another version for the BBC, for the Acorn soft release, which is super rare, SG45. And it was just the 6502 second processor version. So if you come across that, please do let me know. Moving on then, it was re-released by Superior Software in the later 80s. Electron, normal BBC, and then the Micro Master version. If you find the compact, the Master Compact 3.5-inch version, again, please let me know. So moving down, another PC version. The Rainbird version there. Here we go, my original Amiga version, which is a fantastic 16-bit version of the game, and its ST version, probably a bit faster. I think the ST was clocked slightly faster. That's the Rainbird versions of both those. It came out on PC, so here is the 2-disc version of Elite Plus, which was a slightly updated version of the game. With more colours and better graphics. That's the budget release for the PC. Elite Plus. It was also released by Microplay on 5¼ inch floppy, and then also there was a CD-ROM version. And then randomly, the other version that I've got is the PC98 Japanese release. I don't think there's that many of those out there, and until a few months ago I didn't even know that that version existed. So a few other bits and bobs then. This is the BBC Micro User's Guide to Playing Elite. That came as a two-parter and was given away with the magazine. Part 2, I seem to think was just a type-in for a cheat program. But part 1 is really interesting because it tells you quite a bit of information about how to get the most out of Elite. And this is our original version from the 80s. This is the one that my dad had. So it's nice to keep hold of that. This is the novello which Elite was famous for. It included an entire story which set the scene, gave you all the background. And it was a story about a guy called Alex Ryder who was given a Cobra Mark III upon his dad's death and 100 credits. And it was his story about becoming elite and avenging his father. I'm not sure what this is. Impact help sheet came with one of the games, so I don't know. Impact Games Club. So someone obviously needed a bit of help on exactly what to do. And then I've also got this, which is quite random. This is an American help book, which didn't come with the game, but you can see it's an official licensed product. Pittsburgh. Okay, just to round off then, I thought I'd show you a few versions running, which I've got. So on the left there is Arc Elite, which is widely regarded as probably the best version of Elite. And the thing which makes it so good is it's no longer player-centric. The universe carries on and continues around you. So you'll be flying around and you'll see police attacking pirates, or you'll see miners mining asteroids, completely independent from what you're doing. So it makes you feel much smaller, and it gives you a much greater sense of breadth that the universe is breathing and there's stuff actually happening. So that's an amazing version to play. The problem is it's absolutely nails. This is a very interesting version. This is a conversion to the Acorn Atom. So apparently David Braben did some of the original coding for BBC Elite on his Atom, and then this was converted to a 32K Atom a few years ago by a Dutch Acorn user. And incidentally, the Atom is playing the ASCII music from the C64 version, which you can hear in the background. So I think that's a pretty impressive version. And then on the right there is the second processor BBC Micro version, which I think is probably still the best version of all. Tightest controls. And over here we've got the Elite Plus PC version. This is actually running on an Amiga with a PC bridge board, but fantastic fully filled graphics, 256 colours, really good, lots of extra things to buy and extra missions. And then if we just swap the monitor over, here we've got the MSX version running, which has got fantastic colours and great graphics, but I think it's an absolute pig to play. For some reason there's a very strange fisheye effect which goes on, which essentially means that you've got no accuracy over your movement. So if you try and dock, as soon as you turn, you get the goldfish bowl effect, and you're no longer where you thought you were. So it's absolute rubbish. Anyway, thanks for listening, and if you have any of those versions of Elite that I don't have and would like to pass them on to a good cause, please let me know. Bye bye.